Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our second last presentation for the day. This is the Draft Civil Aviation Search and Rescue regulations. We will be taken through this particular set of regulations by our Mr. Richard Cherop, who will be presenting on the Draft Civil Aviation Search and Rescue regulations. Now, wish to remind all our participants that in case you intend to make any verbal comments, you can do so by indicating the same under the questions, ask a questions tab, or you can ask for the floor for purposes of giving verbal comments. Also, for our participants on Facebook, you can kindly type on the comments section, and your questions will be directed to the panelists who will respond on the same. Finally, we also are we still continue receiving and accepting input comments received through the dedicated KCAA email address, which is the kcas2021@kcaa.or.ke. We have put up a poll section that will enable you give us feedback on the platform used, the presenters who made the presentations, as well as panelists. This will enable us ensure that future interactions using the various platforms, especially the virtual platforms, are conducted in a more successful manner. So to start us off, our Mr. Richard Cherop is standing by to take us through the Draft Civil Aviation Search and Rescue Regulations 2021. Karibu Bana Cherop.
Thank you, Dennis, and I take this opportunity to welcome you to this session where we are going to present the proposed amendments to the Aeronautical Search and Rescue Regulations 2018. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the ATS Department of Air Navigation Services for already they shared some comments on this Aeronautical Search and Rescue regulations, and hopefully those comments will be taken on board. However, what I'm presenting is the proposed changes which were published in the KCA website in the last 3 weeks. So as you have been told, my name is Richard Cherop, the ATM and Search and Rescue Inspector at Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. Where's my shot? I will start with the first regulation, that is on citation. As in any other regulations, we have these regulations have been arranged into parts, and there are also schedules to these regulations. So in the citation, these amendments was made. The first one is on citation, like in any other regulations. Since we are reviewing the 2018 regulations, these regulations, this first regulation or on citation is amended. The year is just amended. So to read that these regulations may be cited as Aeronautical Search and Rescue Regulations. We have used even the word aeronautical to differentiate because, you know, we have the maritime search and rescue, And also now we, as the Civil Aviation Authority, we are concerned with the aeronautical search and rescue. Uh, on sub-regulation 2 or regulation 2, to this, which is still on debate or interpretation, we had interpreted the Director Air Navigation Services to mean Director for the time being responsible for the air navigation services. Uh, since these regulations are made for the air navigation services, the team and through the legal drafters and the legal team thought that it is better not to define a person who is being regulated from the regulation, and thus it was removed. The Director General, the other one on interpretation was Director General, which means the Director General of the Civil Aviation Act under the Civil Aviation Act. So there was a change. Initially, it used to have the or appointed under such section of the Act. So it was just a turn for clarity, and defines the Director General means the Director General appointed under the Civil Aviation Act. That interpretation was a person. Uh, this was just corrected and introduced the word instead of an article search and rescue, we say in an article search and rescue. So a person means an institution or organization equipped to assist an article search and rescue operation, an organ of state or government uh, agency of the government or a foreign country. So that was just amended for just the correction was just that small addition of changing an A into an is the major change in that interpretation. So regulation 4 is that regulation on provision of search and rescue service, and initially we had said that the Director General and Navigation Services is designated Article Search and Rescue Agency for Article Search and Rescue. So the amendment down there is that the authority shall designate. So this amendment was done to provide for the authority to designate. We had gone directly in these regulations into designating the Director INS as the designated search and rescue. However, the proposal, which is also as a result of legal team drafters advice. They say that the better to use the term the authority shall designate a Tribal Search and Rescue Agency for Tribal Search and Rescue operations in Kenya. And sub-regulation 2, it was also amended to provide for the authority. So this sub-regulation 3, the designated search and rescue agencies shall in coordination with the authority. So this was done with the removal of the word in coordination with the authority for clarity. This that was done, and then now the designated article search and rescue agency shall. So the provisions have been provided in that sub regulation 3. In sub regulation in regulation 13, it is about entry into the territory of Kenya by other state parties. These are parties which are likely to assist in the operations of search and rescue. So this regulation was amended for clarity and by putting reference to the Director General in the regulations and replacing it with the designated search and rescue. You know, this service, it is a service which the authority designated or performed by the Director of the Navigation Service, under the letters of designation or as designated by the state. So this regulation was amended for clarity and reads that the designated search and rescue agencies shall coordinate with relevant government authorities and subject to such conditions as specified in the by such authorities permit immediate entry into Kenyan territory. The word which was also changed was is the term prescribed. And then in these regulations, mostly you see in most of the regulations, prescription is replaced by the term specified. And in this specification is what the authority has specified in therein. So this continued to sub-regulation 2, and where we in sub-regulation 2, we just was amendment amended the reference to the Director General to the designated agency. So this is the only change to that sub-regulation. So it says other states parties who wish the article search and rescue units to enter the territory of Kenya for article search and rescue purposes shall transmit a request giving full detail of the projected mission and the need for it to the designated agency. So instead, now that this function being they are having been delegated to the Director of the Navigation Service, so it is better that the other agencies who wants to participate in these aspects of search and rescue can directly coordinate the same with the entity to also and also taking that no taking note of that search and rescue is not most it's done with no delay, minimum delay for the purpose of assisting and in the search of persons and aircraft as applicable. Sub-regulation 3, it's also amended the reference to the Director General to the designated agency. So these are all, which is now also still the delegated, designated to Air Navigation Service. So the regulation 3 says that subject to sub-regulation 2, which is up there, the designated agency shall. So it provides those provisions therein, but now it is the designated agency's roles has been outlined in that sub-regulation. And in sub-regulation 36 is the transitional clause, like we have been explaining in some transitional provision, sub-regulation 36, we're replacing the words prescribed by specified. So any person carrying any out any activity prescribed in this regulation, so we change that word specified. So to read now that any person carrying out any activity specified in these regulations immediately before the coming into operations of these regulations shall within 12 months from the coming into force of the thereof shall make measures to ensure full compliance with these regulations. So it is just a transitional clause that shows that in case the person who had been providing this service can have that continuity for a period of 12 years because compliance. And then on schedules, this was formatted by moving the schedules to, okay, if you see, it is just a formatting issue on the schedule because it just came, the schedules were just shared on the lab, just immediately after the last schedule. We had the same regulations continuing on the same page, so it was just renumbered. And this is just the brief comments. We also take the concerns that the anti-concession and risk regulations has not been amended for quite some time. So this is one of the annexes which has now had a review in the recent past. So I would also want to just take this opportunity before we request or we seek your comments. I want to take through the comments which were provided by air traffic services to the following this application of this regulation into the website. So this what I'm sharing now is the comments which we received by the air navigation services, and there is the cap which they have also, it is there, and then they just say that they said that to standardize this, they said in exercise of the powers conferred by Section 82 of the Civil Aviation Act 2013, the Cabinet Secretary responsible for aviation makes the following orders. So, in this clause, which is in which normally before the citation begins, the whole text read that in the powers, in exercise of the powers conferred by Section 82 of the Civil Aviation Act 2013, the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, although makes the following regulations. So the proposal there was done to standardize with other regulations. However, this will be considered when the team are now reviewing during this review to see, because you've seen that we have presented to this session a number of regulations. This week we have been doing almost, I think this around almost 30 regulations of which will be promulgated. So that that will be standardized to the concerns of all other regulations. On interpretation, it talks, there was the designated agency means the office of the designated by the Director General for the purpose of coordinating such a risk. So you remember this is what we tried to propose an amendment. However, for clarity, in accordance with our setup. So the navigation services wants now that we provide a definition or an interpretation for the term designated agency. This will, when the team reconvenes for review and taking of comments from stakeholders, this consideration will be taken on board. In sub-regulation 4, the provision of search and rescue service. So all the text they say that the designated search and rescue agencies shall be responsible to the Director General for coordinating and directing the prompt provisions of and search and rescue. So the proposal there is that the designated search and rescue agency shall be responsible for coordinating and promulgating the prompt provisions of and search and rescue. So what they have initiated there in which has been highlighted is that the only text retained, since this is a delegated service by the state, which is now the Director General. So, and then automatic separation should need to be or and basic for majority level. Okay, the team, these comments we will also be considered one that time of incorporating of stakeholders' comments, and with the help of all the teams, that is the experts in the legal departments, and also the drafters, who this will be incorporated accordingly. Or sub-regulation 3 on of 4, it says the designated search and rescue agency shall. So it provides those removal, but they have the NS provided that we remove removal of the word in coordination with the authority for clarity. This is okay. Interpretation designated agency is adopted. So I think that's a positive comment, since it is just proposing the same. So it is a comment that is okay. And then sub-regulation 9, in regulation 9, is registration of ELDs and PLBs. So in the text, it says that the Director General is the authority, the Director General of the authority shall maintain the national IPRDs. So, but now is this one is a positive comment, and actually as a delegated function, or as the now this one it will be considered to amend for clarity to indicate that the designated umbilical search and rescue agency shall maintain the national IBRDs. On regulation 13 is about entry into territory of Kenya by other aircrafts, and I think the comments there is that is supported. So that will be taken into. So that comment is, they say that the comment is okay if the interpretation of the designated agency is adopted. So we will look into this to ensure that this one is taken on board, and also as we define the designated agency. In sub-regulation 2, the proposal also is that this is okay if the interpretation of designated agency is adopted. So we will look to that. Likewise to sub-regulation 3. In regulation 21, that is provisions of procedures at the scene of accident. The recommendation may be considered as part of regulations after consensus. So there is that regulation 21, and then they were of the view that this be removed as part of these regulations and revert into the accident regulation. Yeah, you know, the procedures at the scene of accidents, we had said that in Regulation 21, the Cabinet Secretary shall ensure that the wreckage resulting from aircraft accident within Kenya, or in case of an accident in the high seas, within which the aeronautical search and rescue is within the search and rescue region, is removed or chart following the completions of the accident investigations if the presence might constitute an hazard. So this they say that this is it's in the annex 12. It is a recommendation and needs to be consented with office of the CS on this. So there is also an issue of requirement of MOUs and LO letters of agreements between also the NS and the accident investigation department in matters accidents. And also before an accident is considered, there have been search and rescue activities which goes on until the time accident investigation takes on board. So as a recommendation, we have also had to put this into our regulation, uh, taking cognizance that from time to time, a recommendation mature with time matures into a standard. And also, we done this in compliance also with what we call the compliance checklist. As we do a compliance checklist, uh, we need to provide how to go on how we have complied with the standards and recommended practices. So we will consider this view, and we support that in the next time when before we do our final submission for the promulgation of these regulations, consensus will have to be reached. And then on Regulation 32, recovery of certain expenses. So what the NS had proposed is that the Director General designating the Search and Rescue Agency function on behalf of the state. So actually, that statement is correct. The DG is acts as through the convention. The Director General is responsible for the state in matters of the standards and recommended practices in the Chicago or the annexes, all the annexes that is. So, uh, so we will take this comment on board and see that your views has also been addressed in this aspect. Uh, thereafter, in subsequent regulations, there is the issue of the cabinet secretary in the place of the director general. So we will consider these views, and also with the assistance of the legal team on the interchangeable use of the word director general and the cabinet secretary as applicable. And the regulation 36 is on. It says that this means okay. There is just it says that it's just one and the same thing, but if you might see, I think there was just the use of the word prescribed, and we change the word prescribed to specify. Otherwise, in content and text, that is what we that's it is the same sentence. So that concludes the comments which we received from the air navigation services, the office of the manager of traffic services, who is now the person responsible for the coordination of matters and local search and rescue.
Thank you very much, Bwana Cherop, for taking us through this particular set of regulation, which is the second last regulation, being the draft civil aviation aeronautical search and rescue regulations. Thank you also for going through the list of comments and input that we have received so far on this particular set of regulations. So at this point, I'd like to invite any of our participants to give any input or comments on the regulations that have been presented or any of the earlier presented regulations. Feel free to indicate so under the questions tab, and you will be given the floor to make your comments and remarks. Separately, we also request that we get your feedback. That's under the polls section. We do have a number of questions that require your input or feedback, and this will enable us ensure that the next time we are using such a platform or holding virtual stakeholders forum, we undertake the same as efficiently and as effective as possible. There are just a few questions there touching on the conduct of the particular forum that we have been having, the public participation forum, your levels of satisfaction, as well as the the presenters who have been taking you through the list of regulations that we have so far. So still waiting for any comments or input from the industry, from the stakeholders, so that our panelists can be able to respond to the same. As we come to the tail end of this exercise, it has been a long way coming from the very first regulation that we undertook. That's on Monday, being the personnel licensing regulations. We've been able to go through a set of 29 regulations, and of which 2 of them have been undertaken twice. That's the civil aviation personnel licensing regulations, as well as well as the air operator certification and administration regulations. So it's quite a commendable exercise that we have undertaken, having gone through an entire set of 30 regulations from Monday up to this point. We appreciate so much the input and the comments that we have received, both through the dedicated KCAA email address, which is kcas2021@kcaa.or.ke. That's kcas2021@kcaa.or.ke. Comments that have been coming in through the Facebook page, as well as the verbal comments and written comments under the Ask New Question tab that is on the right hand side, the bottom right hand side of the screen. So ladies and gentlemen, kindly let us have your comments and input as we come to the tail end of this particular presentation. We also appreciate very much the participants that we have been who have been with us throughout the conduct of this meeting. We have recorded quite impressive numbers in terms of participation, and we thank you. We thank you so much for your input, comments, and participation throughout this stakeholders forum that we have been having. So at this point, kindly allow me then to bring this particular meeting to an end as we wrap up our regulations. The next set of regulations that we'll be going through will be the civil aviation radio frequency spectrum utilization regulations that will be presented by our Mr. Potas Oganga, the chief CNS inspector. I'm also informed that during this presentation, we will get some remarks from our Director General touching on the conduct of this particular exercise that we have been undertaking as we prepare to wrap up the same. This exercise has been running from Monday up to this point, and we've gone through an entire set of 30 regulations. So we look forward to seeing you in the next meeting that we will be having, the next set of regulations that we'll be having. To do so, you are requested to register to follow the link that is to follow the link that has been put up under the Ask a New Question provision. This will take you directly to the next set of regulations that we will be going through. So thank you very much, and see you in the during the next set of regulations starting from 4 p.m. Thank you very much for the same. Asante.